everyone, my name is Daniela and welcome to Northplace, Anyplace. My Anyplace, well today, it's in my kitchen and I'm here with my good friends Nair and Lisa.
Hello.
So girls, I don't know about you, but there's just something about the smell of something being baked in the kitchen. It reminds you of home. It has this warm, cozy home feeling. So although we're not able to provide you with what we're baking here, we hope that once you're done watching the service that you feel like Northplace is home.
Yes, that is why if you are new to Northplace or joining us for the first time, we would love for you to text I am here to 31996.
And then you will receive a link to a connection card form. That way we can send information so you can connect with us and you can get to know us better.
And we also have a way for you guys to connect with our Northplace family. Now they're not able to greet you with crepes like we have here, but if you go into the little chat window, you're able to say hello and they're able to greet you. And if you have any questions or any needs, they're able to help you that way.
Parents, we also want your kids to feel welcome. That is why our amazing kids ministry led by Pastor Tim has created 3 different age-specific online services where they will have fun and learn about Jesus.
You will find all this content on our Northplace Kids Facebook page.
Again, we have lots of information that we can't wait to share with you guys, especially about Mother's Day service next weekend.
So join us now as we are about to enter into a powerful time of worship, which will be followed by a message from our pastor, Brian Jared. We promise it will continue to bless you and equip you. See you soon.
To reveal the kingdom coming and to reign. and the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe for the souls of all who come to the Father are restored. And the church with Christ was born, and the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth above shall not kneel, shall not fade. By His blood and in His name, in His freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God alone, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Come on, right where you are,
This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. We welcome you to Northplace from any place. Maybe this is the first time you're watching. We're so glad that you're here. We have come to worship Jesus. Let's do that together. You can have it all, every part of my take this life and breathe on this heart that is now yours. You can have it all, every part of my world. Take this life and breathe on this life that is now yours. And oh, the joy I found surrendering my Taste, laugh, and breathe. This heart that is now
Give you all we are. We worship Jesus. Before I spoke a word, you singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Come on, let's sing this together. And all the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I could hurt, don't deserve till you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. It's your love. When I was your foe, when I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You never stop fighting, no. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt nowhere, when I felt nowhere, you paid it all for me. With your blood, yes, you did, Lord. And you have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, finds till unfound, leaves the 99. I could hurt, I don't deserve till you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's nothing
There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me.
Come on, let's sing this as a reminder of ourselves.
There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me.
No shadow.
There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No shadow.
You want to talk about the overwhelming, reckless love of God. These are some people here who know all about that. These are just the latest batch of letters that have come into us from the prisons, from the services that we've provided since Easter, and many of them have asked us to continue to provide. And so every time we do, there are more letters that come. And we have a team of people who are responding to every single letter. And I have read through these, and I'm telling you, it wrecks me. Every time I read them, they wreck me. These people are blown away, man after man, woman after woman, that a church would take time to provide a service at such a busy time of the year for them. They feel like they're worthless, and the fact that we just stopped to provide an Easter service for them, it communicated a level of dignity. I can't put into words what they say in these letters about how much it just lifted them as their worth, as a value, as a human being. And they tell it over and over again. And they talk about how not only them, they notice the guards listening, and they notice the administrators listening, and people that have never gone into a chapel listening. They know God is working in people's lives. And I just want to say thank you, Northplace, for your investment that allows us to be in places like this. One of the letters that I got, and I'm just going to be honest with you, I opened it up. There are letters from every prison across the state, almost every, so many prisons across the state of Texas. And this one is from a lady from a women's unit named Tasha. And when I open it up, it's a check that says from the Texas Department of Criminal Justice Inmate Trust Fund. I didn't even know there was such a thing. It's a small gift. And to be honest, I don't want to take it. I want this to go back in Tasha's fund, however that works. Susan, who helps us with our prison ministry and leads the initiative at Hughes and administrated all this for us, she was a former inmate herself, met God in prison, had her life transformed in prison, began ministry in prison, and is so passionate about what she does because these people have her story. And she's told me before, there have been checks come in I wouldn't cash. And she said, Pastor, every time you do that, you send a message to those people their money's not as good as your money, that their dignity is not what yours is. And that's not at all. I see this as too holy, too sacred. I don't want to cash it. But she's asked me not to rob these people of their blessing. And so I'm just going to ask you, I'm going to hand this in to our finance people, and as if it's the widow's mite. Something was done that touched Tasha's heart, and she wanted to give God something back. And we just happen to be the recipient of that, and we're going to steward it well. And I want you to pray for Tasha. I want you to pray for over 1,000 men and women across the state of Texas that have tested positive. There have been numerous deaths. Many of the guards have tested positive, numerous deaths among the employees in the prison system. Just imagine that's a closed environment. That's an incubation place for this virus. So just pray for God's protection, and pray for Tasha. Pray for God to bless her, whatever that looks like where she is. And I just want to say thank you. And I pray her generosity motivates your generosity. It does mine. It spurs me on to good works, as the scripture says. And I hope it does you, and ask you to keep positioning Northplace to be in these prisons and anywhere else God opens the door. There are opportunities to give by our website online, or by text, or by address, traditional check. It's all available to you on your screen. And I just want to say thank you, Northplace, for your incredible generosity. Keep it up. I do have one just quick announcement that I want to make, just drop a little hint. And some of you are going to be really excited about this. Some of you really don't know who this is to be excited, but I just got word as I was recording this today, right before I recorded, that my invitation to Lisa Harper to join me on Mother's Day for a message has been accepted. I've been trying to get Lisa here forever because she's just an incredible lady. If you've never heard her, she's a profound theologian. She's incredibly funny, authentic, a mom. She's an adoptive mom, a speaker known around the world, a best-selling author. Max Lucado called her one of the best tour guides of the Bible around. She's incredible. And she's going to join me. I'm going to get to interview her for Mother's Day. So part of our Mother's Day celebration next weekend will have Lisa Harper as a part of that. So spread the word, tell your friends, and get the word out. Look forward to seeing you, Northplace. And I have a word on my heart today. that I really want you to open your heart for. So join me inside the sanctuary of Northplace Church. I heard this statement a few weeks ago, and while it doesn't sound all that significant, it was chilling to me. This is what it said: nobody pays attention to the weatherman after the storm has passed. It was a chilling reminder to me that this season is a window of opportunity where the spiritual sensitivities of people are more heightened than ever. And if we don't seize this moment, we're going to waste a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It was that urgency that led me to this message today. And I want to make a deal with you. It's a promise of sorts that there's no way you listen to this entire conversation all the way through with an open heart and not experience some level of deep spiritual change. That's a promise and somewhat of a dare. So hang with me. As a communicator, there are a lot of different ways that I can arrange information. But today I'm going to present in what is known as the problem-solution format. I want to spend a significant amount of time diving into the problem so that we all understand it. But I don't want to just leave you with the problem. I want to show you a gospel-centered solution to the problem. So hang with me. I'm not really sure, when this is all said and done, what historians are going to label this season that we're living through. There's a period of history in the collapse of the 1930s when the economy fell apart. We call that the Great Depression. The economic downturn that started in 2008 has been called the Great Recession. I'm hearing some label this COVID-19 pandemic and all of the accompanying fallout that came with it the Great Pause. Again, I'm not sure what it will wind up being called when it's all said and done. But for now, the Great Pause is an accurate description of this moment. This virus has brought the world to a standstill. And in doing so, we've seen the best and the worst of humanity. There have been these incredible stories of selflessness, sacrifice, and service, like the priest in Italy who gave his ventilator to a younger patient, which eventually cost the priest his life, or the medical professionals and first responders who are putting their lives on the line just by getting up and going to work every day. But we've also seen the uglier side of humanity, whether it's the fights breaking out in store aisles over a few rolls of toilet paper, or racially motivated violence against Asian Americans as if they were somehow responsible for this virus. Crisis always exposes the good, the bad, and the ugly of the human race. Crisis strips away our securities and our identities that we cling to, and in the process, it exposes us for who we really are. But this virus is not only exposing us, it's exposing the frailties of the idols we worship. And that's the silver lining to this whole thing. When the normal routines of our lives evaporated, so did a lot of the idols that we run to for refuge. There are no sports, no theaters, no concerts. Hollywood is basically on lockdown. The net worth of a lot of people shrunk dramatically. There's no buffet binging and no bellying up to a bar. And even those who find solace in the idol of their careers have felt a pause of epic proportions. This disruption of the Great Pause should be the greatest moment in any of our lives to hear the voice of God and have our spiritual affections set on fire. But for many, the idols of our heart that are being exposed in this season have simply rerouted themselves like a blocked blood vessel, finding new ways to flow through our lives and maintain control over us. For example, some of us gained an extra hour or two in our day because we're not having to go back and forth commuting to work, but instead of redeeming the gift of that time with something spiritually beneficial, we have let our idols manifest in new ways and steal that time from us too. There's not a single one of us that doesn't have idols competing for the lordship and the loyalty of our hearts. The question is, are you aware of them? And even more specific, what has the Great Pause exposed about you and your idols. That's why I kind of titled this talk today, The Great Pause and its expose on the idols of our heart. Some of you are incredibly confused right now because when you hear me use the word idol or idolatry, you immediately think of primitive people worshiping statues. And the Bible is full of those kinds of references of idolatry. Matter of fact, in Acts 17, Paul describes that kind of idolatry when he visits the city of Athens. Polytheism ruled the day in ancient Greek culture. There were idols on every corner. Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. Ares, the god of war. Artemis, the goddess of fertility and wealth. There were hundreds and hundreds of gods and idols in the Greek culture. And to be honest, our culture is not all that different. No, we don't have the statues, but we have our own set of idols. We have our own totem poles, our own shrines built to the gods of beauty, money, power, and achievement. Tim Keller, in his incredible book, Counterfeit Gods, says it this way: we may not physically kneel before the statue of Aphrodite, but many today are driven into depression and eating disorders by an obsessive concern over body image. We may not actually burn incense to Artemis, but when money and career are raised to cosmic proportions, we perform our own version of a child sacrifice, neglecting family and community to achieve a higher place in business and gain more wealth and prestige. In ancient times, the deities were bloodthirsty and hard to appease. They still are. When things are going well in our hearts and we're content, the stock markets are rising, real estate values are soaring, unemployment is low, health is good, the job is secure. When it's like that, it's hard to see our idols. But in moments like this, when those things have been involuntarily stripped from us, our hearts begin to reveal where its true allegiance lies. Paul said in the book of Colossians that greed, along with a host of other things, was not just bad behavior. He labeled them idolatry. Listen to what he says, Colossians chapter 3, verse 5. So put to death the sinful earthly things lurking within you. Have nothing to do with sexual immorality, impurity, lust, and evil desires. But watch this. Don't be greedy, for a greedy person is an idolater, worshiping the things of this world. It's not just greed is idolatry, but all these other things: sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, greed. So all of those are worshiping the things of this world, and Paul calls them idolatry. So Paul is saying and warning that money, along with many other things, can take on divine attributes, and our relationship to those things can start looking a lot like worship. Now listen to what the psalmist has to say about what happens to us when our relationship with our idols starts looking like worship. Psalm 115, verse 4. Their idols are merely things of silver and gold, shaped by human hands. They have mouths but cannot speak, eyes but cannot see. They have ears but cannot hear, and noses but cannot smell. They have hands but cannot feel, feet but cannot walk, throats but cannot make a sound. Now notice this. This is the most important element. Verse 8. And those who make idols are just like them, as are all who trust in them. So everybody who makes an idol and everybody who trusts in an idol becomes just like the idols that they worship. Now this is profound. You got to catch that. Those who worship idols become just like their idols. Those statues are blind and mute, deaf. They are not alive. And the psalmist says those who worship them become like them, becoming spiritually dead, spiritually blind, spiritually mute, and spiritually deaf. Here's what Psalm 115 is really saying. You become what you worship. If you don't like what you're becoming, change what you're worshiping. N.T. Wright, one of the most recognized theologians of modern time, made an incredible statement in his book, Simply Christian. And this is a very deep and lengthy statement, but I think it's so profound to what I'm about to say, I just want you to engage it for a moment. Here's what N.T. Wright says. This brings us to the first of two golden rules at the heart of spirituality. You become what you worship. When you gaze in awe, admiration, and wonder at something or someone, you begin to take on something of the character of the object you worship. Those who worship money become, eventually, human calculating machines. Those who worship sex become obsessed with their own attractiveness or prowess. Those who worship power become more and more ruthless. So what happens when you worship the Creator God? The answer comes in the second golden rule. Because you were made in God's image, worship makes you more truly human. When you gaze in love and gratitude at the God in whose image you were made, you do indeed grow. You discover more of what it means to be fully alive. Conversely, when you give that same total worship to anything or anyone else, you shrink as a human being. It doesn't, of course, feel like it at the time. When you worship part of the creation as though it were the Creator Himself, in other words, when you worship an idol, you may well feel a brief high, but like a hallucinatory drug, that worship achieves its effect at a cost. When the effect is over, you are less of a human being than you were to begin with. That is the price of idolatry. Now, here's the biggest problem. Most of the things that we turn into idols are really good things. They're decent things. They maybe even be beautiful things that we made the supreme thing in our lives. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being deeply in love with another human being, your spouse, your children. There's nothing wrong with a desire to excel at our careers. There's nothing wrong with longing for financial security. There's nothing wrong with being committed to our fitness and our health or pouring ourselves into a host of other passions. The problem comes when that thing that ought to be number 3 on our priority list begins to replace God as the supreme place on the list. So when number 1 becomes number 3 and number 3 becomes number 1, that's where the problem comes. That's when idolatry starts. This is what St. Augustine labeled disordered loves. Idolatry is taking good things and making them the supreme thing in our lives. Disordered loves. What many people call psychological problems are simply issues of idolatry. Perfectionism, workaholism, chronic indecisiveness, the need to control others. All of them stem from turning good things into idols that drive us into the ground as we try to appease them. Idols will dominate your lives. The real problem with the idols is that they will not just destroy us, but when we start putting God-sized expectations on people and relationships and careers, we end up destroying them when we try to make them supreme in our lives. So what is a modern-day idol of the heart? Anything more important to you than God. Anything that consumes your heart and imagination more than God. Anything that you seek to give you what only God can give you. Here's how Tim Keller describes our idols. Anything so central and essential to your life that should you lose it, your life would feel hardly worth living. An idol has such a controlling position in your heart that you could spend most of your passion and energy, your emotional and financial resources on it without a second thought. It can be family, children, career, making money, achievement, critical acclaim, saving face, or social standing, romantic relationship, peer approval, competence and skill, security, comfort, beauty, brains, a political or social cause, even your morality and virtue, and even success in Christian ministry can become an idol. An idol is anything that you look at and say, man, if I just have that, I will have finally made it. If I just had that, my life would finally have meaning. I would finally have value. I would finally find significance and security if I just had that. If there's anything in your life that is a that other than God that makes you feel that way, when you feel that way about something other than God, it has become a little God in your life. And you're not just desiring it, you're starting to worship it. I mean, think about it. Why do we lie? Why do we break promises? Why do we live selfishly? Now, sure, you could give me the easy answer and say because we're all sinful, and that's true. But there's a deeper, more real answer behind our lies, our broken promises, our selfish living. The real answer is that there is something besides Jesus that we are trusting in to make us happy. There's something that's more important to our hearts than God. There is something that is enslaving our heart because we have taken a good thing and made it the supreme thing in our life. Just about every single idol that competes for lordship in our life can be placed into one of four categories. There are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of different idols that try to control our lives. But they all find their root. They can all be traced back to four different categories. And here's those four categories. Every idol in some way is going to be one of these kinds of idols. An idol of comfort, an idol of approval, an idol of control, or an idol of power. Now here's what I want to do. I'm just going to take a moment and I want to take a dive into just a chart. And I'm going to help. What I want you to see is how idols for the next few moments impact our everyday life in practical ways. So let me just spend a few moments walking through this, and I will tell you, we're going to make this, as I explain this and you start getting into this and you're like, man, I want that, I want to study that, because you need to study this, and more what we have time for today. We have a Northplace community group that we're going to put this in if you want to go get this for further study, and they're going to put it on the screen, maybe at the ticker at the bottom, exactly where you can go get this. But let me just explain it. These are the four basic categories of where every idol comes from. They're either an idol of comfort, an idol of approval, an idol of control, or an idol of power. So a lot of your relationship idols come here in the approval. If you're driven to succeed, you're controlled by money, power. All of that it all comes back to the power segment. So every idol can all find their root to these four, and across the top are the 6 ways that those idols impact our lives in a practical way. Let me just walk you through this. Here's comfort. Here's how and the idols of comfort impact our life. Why it goes unrecognized, how it looks in everyday life. So somebody controlled by the idol of comfort, the reason they can lie to themselves or kind of shroud that idol in their life is because they just look like they're lazy and or laid back and easygoing people. But the price that people that are controlled by the idol of comfort, the price they pay is a lack of productivity. The worst nightmare of someone controlled by the idol of comfort is when there is new stress and demands that are placed upon their life. That's when these people start coming unraveled. The biggest emotional problem for those controlled by the idols of comfort is boredom. They work so hard to avoid the stress and the demands that they wind up getting what they want and they find themselves bored. Here's how other people feel. When you're around somebody that is controlled by an idol of comfort, you wind up feeling hurt and neglected because they wind up pushing you aside to avoid stress and demands. And in every idol that is in our life, every idol is trying to be some counterfeit of what the gospel promises us, of what Jesus promises us. So with the idols of comfort, what gospel reality are they trying to counterfeit? Peace in Christ. Because there is something God wants to give you that is a promise to you in the gospel, that is available to you in Christ, that is only from Christ, a peace that He can give you, that the idols of comfort are trying to provide a counterfeit of that reality. All right? And that's we're finding something that only, and they won't last. We're going to put our weight on all these kinds of things and realize the only thing that's ever going to last that these idols are trying to satisfy is the true peace in Christ. Now, here's the second grouping of idols, approval. Why it goes unrecognized. How does it actually look in our life? The idols of approval hide because someone that are governed or controlled by idols of approval, they come across as very friendly and very likable. But the price, if you're being controlled by idols of approval, the price you pay is you give up your independence. You live a less independent life because you're spending your whole life trying to strive for somebody's approval. There's probably a person or a set of people that you've given up your own independence because you want to be wanted by them. And that God of approval is controlling you and you've surrendered your independence because of it. What is the worst nightmare of somebody that is being controlled by idols of approval? It's rejection. The greatest fear of your life, if you're being lorded over by idols of approval, is that the people that you want to want you, when those people reject you, it's what destroys you the most. And the biggest emotional problem for somebody controlled by idols of approval is cowardice. Because you become so afraid to be yourself and to stand up for yourself because you're afraid if you do, you will no longer be approved or accepted by these people. You've made them kind of the God in your life. It's really not them. It's your need for approval. And you become a coward in the process because you're afraid you're going to alienate people. Others that are around people that are controlled by approval, other people around you, if that's you, they feel smothered. Because you don't want distance, and you're afraid if they don't text you right back or they don't call you right back, they don't like you. And so you wind up smothering those people because you're controlled by idols of approval. So there is a gospel reality that the idols of approval are trying to counterfeit. And ultimately, it's God's love. There is an approval, an acceptance, and a security in the love of God that none of these idols of approval will ever meet. Nobody will ever meet in your life. And if you can get solidly embraced in this, it will eradicate the need for all of these idols of approval. Now, here are idols of control. Again, there are thousands and thousands of idols, but they all come back to either comfort, approval. Talk about the idols of control. Why it goes unrecognized and how it looks in our life. Somebody that is worshiping the idol of control, it doesn't always get seen because it comes across as if they're incredibly competent. They're a controlling person, but it comes across as if they're incredibly competent. So it's shrouded in competence. But somebody controlled by control or manipulated by control, they pay the price of loneliness and they give up the freedom of spontaneity. And what that means is, when you try to control people or you have the need to control people, you wind up pushing relationships away. You wind up living a very lonely life. And you give up the joy and the beauty of spontaneity because everything has to be controlled in your life. You don't know what it is to experience the beauty of spontaneity. The worst nightmare of somebody that is sacrificing their life to the gods of control is uncertainty. These people right now are at their wits' end. Because this pandemic has stripped everything they can't control this. And their world is falling apart. Uncertainty destroys them. Ambiguity destroys them. And their biggest problem emotion is anxiety. And that's exactly what they're feeling right now. Now notice this. Those people that have to live around people who are controlled by the idols of control, their family members, their coworkers, their friends live condemned, judged, and often offended. Because this person is always incredibly self-disciplined. They're driving like mad, and in the process of all of their controls they put on their life and others, people around them feel condemned, judged, and offended. And this idol and all the idols in this category are trying to counterfeit the blessings of God in your life. You, for some reason, don't trust God to provide these things. So the idols have usurped control, and because there's not total trust in God to bless all the areas of your life, you think it's up to you. You've got to do it. And it winds up leaving you empty, and you wind up crushing the people in your life when there's already something promised to you in the gospel that can satisfy everything these idols will never be able to deliver for you. And finally, power. The idols of power. Here's why it goes unrecognized. Because somebody controlled by the idol of power, they're driven to success, achievement, acclaim. These people come across as incredibly confident. So they label themselves, I'm just confident, or people around them say they don't see this stuff as an idol. It's just labeled as confidence. Here's the price they pay. They wind up carrying burdens that they were not meant to bear, and they have this incredible responsibility on their shoulders as if the world is going to collapse if they're not involved. And then the worst nightmare for somebody controlled by idols of power, humiliation. They're worried about the dark side of them coming out, everybody knowing that. Their reputation is their God. And so their greatest fear in their life, their worst nightmare is humiliation. And their biggest emotional problem is anger. If anything, somebody controlled by the idols of power threatens their power or their confidence or to humiliate them, their immediate response is anger. And other people that live and work around this person feel used, manipulated, handled. And there is a gospel reality that this idol is trying to counterfeit, and that's the righteousness of Christ. There is something that Christ can give you that can fill the human void that idols of power are trying to fill that never can. A righteousness and a right standing and a spiritual power through the righteousness of Christ that can never be manufactured by man. Now, this great pause has been an incredible opportunity for deep spiritual awakening, because discomfort is always an opportunity for an awakening. This season is exposing our idols and making us aware of them. But awareness isn't enough. Awareness is a beginning, but it's just the beginning. The only way to free ourselves from the destructive influence of our idols is to turn back to a living God, the only one who can bear the full weight of what our heart truly longs for. The idols of power and comfort and approval and control are making us a lot of promises that they will never be able to deliver on. So whatever is on the inside of us that is attracting us to that idol, it can only find its fulfillment in Him. As the idols of our heart are being exposed during the great pause, we have a choice. We can ignore what God is doing in us right now and keep sacrificing our lives, our joy, our freedom to the shrine of whatever idol controls us. Or we can take this season as a gift from God and use this moment to slay the idols of our heart. But how do you do that? How do you slay the idols of your heart? In the beginning, I told you that I wanted to take a dive into the problem, but I didn't want to leave you with the problem. I wanted to give you a solution. This is where the solution comes in. I want to leave you today with 3 simple but profound practices that will uproot the idols of your heart. Number 1, surrender. Number 2, generosity. And number 3, mission. Every time you practice one of these 3 disciplines, a part of your sinful self dies. You're putting to death the sinful nature. Every time you surrender more fully to Christ, every time you walk out in an act of generosity, every time you step out in the mission of God into the world, you're killing the sinful nature. You're defying the sinful nature. You're uprooting the idols of your heart, and you're making more space for Christ to reign over you. It's what John the Baptist said in John 3:30, I must decrease so that Christ may increase. Every time you surrender more deeply, every time an act of generosity, whether it's a kind word out of your mouth, an act of service, sacrificial giving, every time you set out and take risk to fulfill the mission of God in the world, idols start losing their grip on your heart. It's like you're starving your idol and feeding your spirit. So I want to ask you several pointed questions today that are going to stir some deep thought in each of these 3 areas: surrender, generosity, and mission. And I'm going to give you all this stuff, all right? I'm going to tell you exactly where to go to get all this stuff. So don't panic right now trying to take screenshots. I know some of you to do that. Write all this down. Right now, I want you to just stay with me. Before I'm done, I'm going to tell you where to go get all this stuff. Well, everything I'm about to say, you're going to be able to go right to it and get it. So I just want you to listen, let it soak in for a moment, think deeply about it with me as we go through it. I want to just ask you 5 questions about each of these 3 areas: surrender, generosity, and mission. Let's start with surrender. I want you to think about it. This will help you kind of start evaluating your surrender, okay? What's in control of your life? If you could give up one thing, what would it be? And why? What role is prayer playing in your life? Like right now, what role is prayer playing in your life? When have you been most spiritually focused this week? What have you learned from the Bible this week? And if these questions make you say, I haven't been praying, I haven't been in the Word, then you're not in the place you need to be to uproot idols through surrender. So these questions, and there are more where this came from around surrender, that start exposing the idols of your heart. And the more surrendered you become, the more you start prying the fingers off of the idols that have a grip around your heart. Now here's a prayer or a statement from St. Augustine about surrender. And I want you to notice this. I'm going to explain this in a minute. With every one of these 3 things, there's a different posture that we're going to talk about in just a moment. But here's St. Augustine's statement. Do not be afraid to throw yourself on the Lord. This is about surrender. Don't be afraid to surrender. He will not draw back and let you fall. Put your worries aside and throw yourself on Him. He will welcome you and heal you. It's a promise of what God will do to you when you fully put your weight on Him. He's not going to move and let you fall. You can trust Him. You can surrender. And then generosity. Let me ask you 5 questions about generosity. Notice the posture. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a minute. Who has benefited from your generosity this week? Has anyone been generous to you in the last week in resources, in words? They spoke some kind words to you or over you or about you, or in actions. Have you been the recipient of generosity? Have you found yourself coveting anything recently? Coveting is a biblical term for you wanting what somebody else has. Maybe their stimulus check was bigger than yours, or something's going on in their life that you want. That's coveting. And if it is, that's a confirmation of some idol trying to control your life. Have you recently missed an opportunity to be generous? How and when? Dealing with these last 2 questions, being honest. Did you miss an opportunity? Because every missed opportunity to be generous, when the Lord speaks to you or you feel led to act in generosity and you don't, you allow that idol, whatever idol is, you allow that idol to keep its grip on your heart. Is there a cause, a person, a project you know you should be generous, you should be generous to, but are delaying? Why? Why are you delaying? Every time you delay, you're giving more time for that idol. But every time you act in obedience, you start prying the fingers of that idol away from your heart. Here is a generosity prayer. It's actually a prayer attributed to a 17th century nun. This is so beautiful. I love this prayer. Give me the ability to see good things in unexpected places and talents in unexpected people. And here's the catch. And give me, O Lord, the grace to tell them so. I know at least a lot of guys, we think a lot of beautiful things about our spouses, about our kids, but because we're not the most verbal people, they don't get out of our mouths. And I'm going to challenge you. It's not just a prayer that the generosity in our lives, it's not just about money, it's about words. It's about actions, about deeds. Don't just let me see them. Give me the ability to see them in other people's lives, but oh Lord, give me the grace to tell them. Help me be generous enough to say it, because every time you say it, that idol is losing its grip. You're slaying the idols of your heart. Now, mission. What risk are you taking at the moment for the mission of God in the world? If you're not taking risks for the mission of God in the world, you're not living a fully biblical Christian life, okay? The mission of God in the world is to reconcile people to Jesus Christ. And if you're not living a life that is doing that, then this is a serious question about how Christian are we, really, if we're not living out the mission of God in the world. Number 2, have you had any conversations about faith with anybody else recently? Who are you in relationship with that's truly challenging you to grow spiritually? What miracles are you praying for? Because if you're not praying for miracles, is it because you don't have a prayer life? Is it because you've doubted the ability of God to act? Because biblical Christians are constantly praying for God to miraculously work in our world. Where is God at work in and around you? Because if you don't see it, it's because you're not looking for it, because God is actively involved in His mission. He's involved in His mission. Are you? And notice the posture. I want to teach you the posture and why there's a posture with each one of these. And I want to walk through prayer with you. There is a specific prayer, and I'm going to give you this. Again, just listen to this right now. I'm going to make all this available to you. But I want to explain to you why these icons are there. Before we do that, let me just read. This is a beautiful benediction, a blessing, a Franciscan benediction. Listen to this. May God bless you with discomfort at easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that you may live deep within your heart. And may God bless you with tears for those who suffer from pain, rejection, starvation, and war, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort them and turn their pain to joy. The mission of God in the world. Now let's move to those prayers. A prayer of surrender, a prayer of generosity, and a prayer of mission. A prayer of surrender. This is what you do, and I want to challenge you to do this. I'm going to do this every day in the month of May. Okay, I've joined thousands of people around the world. I'm going to tell you how to get involved. That every day in the month of May, I'm joining in surrender, generosity, and mission. And I'm living that out in a practical way. And I'm praying this way every day. This is my prayer of surrender. I'm going to get up every day, raise my hands in the air, and I'm going to pray this. I choose to hold my hands up as a symbol of surrender. My life is not about me. I surrender to your lordship. I surrender my preferences, prejudice, and position to you. My fears, my finances, friends, and family to you. And the icon, hands up. So I'm not just saying it with words, I'm acting it out with my body. Number 2, this is a generosity prayer, and I'm going to pray this with my hands cupped. And I've always told you, when you live life with an open hand, God, yeah, He can take out of it, but He can also put in it. It's the blessing of living a generous life. So I choose to hold out my hands as a symbol of generosity. What I have is not mine. I am only a steward of all that you have given me. I want to mirror the way you open your hand to us and lavish your love and life upon us. I want to live an open-handed life in a closed-fist culture. Here's the third part of that prayer, a prayer of mission. So I went with hands up, hands cupped out, and now I'm going to stretch my hand forward as I think about mission, and I pray this third prayer. I choose to hold my hands forward as a symbol of mission. I want to live for something greater than me. I want to embrace your kingdom mission. I want to embrace and welcome your mission to the lost, last, least, and lonely. A daily prayer. And then this whole journey that I'm on is requiring these daily prayers, weekly questions, those questions I showed you. There's a host more where this comes from, where we can talk among ourselves in spiritual growth, in relationship, be held accountable, how we're living out surrender, generosity, and mission. And then every month there is a challenge provided so that you can actually act out. A recommendation for you to take a step to act out. Surrender, generosity, and mission. Let me introduce you to the creator of all of this. Her name is Danielle Strickland. And I just recently become acquainted with who she is. And her program right now that she's running is infinitumlife.com. She's an incredible author, speaker, but a very deep disciple of Jesus, helping lead people into deeper lives in Christ. All the questions I asked, the prayers I just prayed, all of that comes from Infinitum Life, but that just means forever, infinity, infinitumlife.com. And you can register for free. And there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people around the world right now through the month of May that are going through this challenge. And I invite you in, because every time you surrender more deeply, every time you step out in generosity, every time you step into the mission of God, you are slaying the idols of your heart. Listen, here's what I want us to do before we finish today. I've just asked the team to bring us back. I asked them to sing that song this weekend, You Can Have It All. It was a part of worship, but we're going to go back into it right now as a time for you just to worship and reflect. Sit in this for a minute. It's an opportunity for you to just let God and His Spirit begin to expose the idols of your heart and the steps that you need to take to begin to pry the fingers of those idols away from your heart. The words of that song, oh, the joy I've found, surrendering my crowns at the feet of the King who surrendered everything, and all the peace that comes when I'm broken and undone by your unfailing grace. I can lift my voice and say, You can have it all, Lord. Every part of my world. Take this life and breathe on this heart that is now yours. Would you, in this moment, just give Him everything? Father, would you bless them and keep them? Would you make your face shine down upon them? Would you be gracious to them? Turn your countenance their direction, and God, would you give them peace? Expose the idols of our hearts and help us, Lord, practice surrender, generosity, and your mission to the point we uproot every idol from our life and give our total allegiance to you. You can have it all, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
You can have it all, Lord. Every part of my world. Take this life and breathe on this heart that is not yours. Come on, sing it out from your heart. Come on. You can have it all, Lord. Every this life and breathe on. This heart that is now yours.
Hey guys, we hope you know how honored we are that you chose to worship with us this weekend. We're really excited about some announcements that are coming up, which probably explains why we're here in our kitchen and we're baking.
With Mother's Day being next weekend and us not being able to honor them the way we normally would, we decided what better way to show them how much time they spent in the kitchen making meals for us meant to us.
Most likely, your love for cooking and food has come from the influence of your mother or your grandmother. No matter where you're from, we all are connected by our food experiences.
Which brings me to the dessert that I made today. This is very special in that I grew up with my mom making this, and anytime she would announce that we're making crepes, regardless of where we were in the house, we would always just kind of flock to the kitchen. So that is why we decided to create an online eat cookbook. It's to share all of these nostalgic recipes. And you guys, we're gonna make this available as a free gift for Mother's Day next weekend.
This is where you come in. We would love for you to submit your favorite recipe as a child or one that you would love to pass out to your own kids.
We made it really simple for you guys to submit your recipes. All you have to do is go to the Mother's Day recipe Facebook page and you can submit your recipes that way.
Just make sure to turn them in by this Monday so we can create the book and have available next weekend for you to share with your mom.
We want you guys to record your kids asking them the following question. What is the favorite food I make for you? Or if you're the husband or somebody else, you can ask them, what is the favorite food that mom makes for you?
Then go to the kids' Facebook page and upload your video to this post by Tuesday. We will be selecting some of them to be in our opening Mother's Day video.
Once again, we want to thank you guys for joining us for this worship experience. And don't forget next weekend to invite all of the moms in your life to join us for our Mother's Day weekend experience. We'll see you then.
The dates and times are Saturday at 5 p.m., Sunday at 9, 10:45, and 12:30. On these platforms are Northplace Church Facebook page, northplacechurch.tv, and our YouTube.
We can't wait to try out all your delicious recipes.